At exactly 9:15 p.m., the candles on my son's birthday cake were still burning, untouched. The wax had started to melt, dripping slowly down the sides like time itself was waiting for permission to move forward. But no one was singing, no one was smiling. Because in the middle of a fully packed steakhouse in downtown Chicago, my sister stood up and screamed my name. Not called, not raised her voice, she screamed. Like I had done something unforgivable, like I had just destroyed something sacred. Crystal glasses trembled. A server froze mid-step, holding a tray of filet mignon like the room had suddenly turned into a crime scene. And my 10-year-old son, Ethan, he looked at me like he didn't recognize me anymore. Like I had just broken a promise he didn't even know how to explain. And in that moment, with all eyes on me, with the entire restaurant waiting, I didn't yell, I didn't defend myself, I didn't rush to fix it. I just said it calmly, evenly, almost gently. The reservation was for 12. Not 12-ish. Not 12 plus, not we'll make it work. Indefinitely not on my tab. That was the moment everything shifted. Not when the manager stepped in, not when the whispers started spreading across tables. Not even when the police lights later reflected through the glass windows. No, it shifted in the smallest, quietest decision I had ever made in my life. I chose not to fix it. For 10 years, I had been the one who fixed everything. The quiet one, the responsible one, the one who smoothed things over before they turned into problems. The one who paid so no one had to feel uncomfortable. I wasn't loud. I wasn't dramatic. I was efficient, predictable, reliable. The kind of person people leaned on until leaning turned into depending, and depending turned into expecting. My name is Avery Morgan. I'm 35 years old. And I run operations for a regional supply chain company in Chicago. My entire world is built on precision, capacity planning, contingency mapping, load balancing. Because here's the truth most people don't want to hear: you cannot load more weight onto a system than it was designed to carry without something breaking. You cannot stretch a structure beyond its limits without consequences. And yet, for 10 years, that's exactly what I allowed. My sister Madison never believed in limits. She believed in moments, in appearances, in walking into a room like it was a stage and everyone else was just there to support the performance. She was charismatic, magnetic, the kind of person people noticed, the kind of person people forgave, and for a long time I was the one quietly funding that forgiveness. Ethan's 10th birthday was supposed to be different. I didn't say that out loud, but it mattered more than I let anyone see. Because 10 is a bridge, not a baby anymore, not a teenager yet. It's that fragile space where kids start to understand the world and how the people in it behave. I didn't want chaos, I didn't want noise, I didn't want unpredictability. I wanted him to feel safe, celebrated, seen, so I planned everything, carefully, precisely. 3 weeks in advance, I booked a private dining room at a high-end steakhouse in River North. 12 seats. Exactly 12, not flexible, not expandable, not negotiable. Me, Ethan, my husband Daniel. Ethan's 2 closest friends and their parents. And my parents, that was it. 12 chairs, 12 place settings, 12 leather-bound menus. I confirmed the reservation twice. Pre-selected appetizers so the kids wouldn't have to wait. Scheduled the cake presentation for exactly 8:45 p.m. Even requested that Ethan sit at the head of the table. Because details matter, structure matters, especially when you're trying to protect something fragile. Madison wasn't invited, not out of cruelty, not out of spite, but out of pattern recognition. Because every time Madison showed up to something I planned, the headcount doubled and the bill tripled. And somehow it always found its way back to me. For years, I told myself it was easier to just pay, easier to avoid the scene, easier to keep the peace. But keeping the peace is just another way of saying you're absorbing the cost of someone else's chaos. We arrived at 6:35 p.m. Ethan was wearing a navy blazer, hair combed back like he was heading into a board meeting instead of his own birthday dinner. He squeezed my hand as we walked in. And I remember thinking, when did he get this tall? The host smiled when he saw us, then hesitated, just slightly. The kind of hesitation you only notice when your brain is trained to detect problems before they're spoken. "Miss Morgan," he said carefully, "your party has already begun seating." My stomach dropped. "Already begun seating?" "Yes," he said, glancing toward the private dining area. "They said they were the Morgan birthday group." I didn't need to ask, I already knew. That quiet, familiar weight settled in my chest, the kind that used to trigger the same automatic response: fix it, smooth it, pay for it. But this time, I didn't move. I turned the corner toward the private dining room and stopped. Cold, there she was, Madison, sitting at the head of the table, Ethan's seat, like it had always been hers. A bottle of red wine already open. Another one breathing beside it. A massive seafood tower rising in the center like a centerpiece designed to impress people who weren't paying for it. Her husband Greg leaned back in his chair like he owned the place. 3 kids glued to their phones. My parents seated comfortably. And her friend Kelsey laughing loudly while snapping photos of lobster tails like it was a social media event. 10 extra people. 10. She saw me and lit up. Like this was a surprise party she had planned for me. Avery, she called out, throwing her arms wide. We decided to make it a real family affair. Behind me, I felt Ethan stop walking. That was the moment that hurt. Not the wine, not the table, not even the audacity. It was the silence behind me. I turned slightly and saw my son looking at the table, then at me, trying to understand something he didn't have the words for yet. And then he asked, quietly, softly, almost like he didn't want to cause trouble, "Mom, where do I sit?" That question did something to me, something permanent. Madison stood up, air-kissed near my cheek, and smiled like everything was perfectly normal. "We ordered a couple bottles to get started," she said casually. "You don't mind, right? It's a celebration." I glanced at the wine label, $150 each, 3 bottles already open. I did the math instantly. I always do, and for the first time in 10 years I didn't adjust the equation. I looked at her, calm, level, controlled. "Madison," I said quietly, "this reservation was for 12. She laughed, waved her hand like I had just said something mildly inconvenient. "Oh, relax," she said. "They can squeeze in more chairs. I told the host it would be fine. We're family." Family. That word has been used to justify more manipulation than any contract ever written. And in that moment, I realized something with absolute clarity. This was never about dinner. This was never about wine. This was never about a reservation. This was about a pattern, a system that had been running for 10 years because I kept feeding it. I stepped aside, called the host quietly. "Is there another private room available?" He hesitated, then nodded. "There's an executive dining room in the back." "Perfect," I said. Then I turned back, smiled at Ethan, bright, warm, like nothing was wrong. "Hey," I said, "change of plans." "We got upgraded." He smiled instantly. Because kids trust what you show them. And in that moment, I made a decision that would change everything. I gathered the people who were actually invited and walked them through the kitchen corridor into a quieter, smaller, controlled space. No noise, no chaos, no performance, just peace. I handed the manager my card, looked him in the eye, and said clearly, "This covers this room only. Separate checks for everything else." He nodded, and just like that, the system broke. Because for the first time in 10 years, I didn't absorb the overflow. And I knew, without even seeing it happen out there in that other room, Madison would keep ordering, because she believed I would fix it. She always had. But this time, I wouldn't. And at exactly 9:15 p.m., when the bill finally arrived, the real story was just beginning. At 9:15 p.m., while my son was laughing in a quiet room just 20 feet away, the bill landed. I didn't see it, I didn't need to, because there's a very specific shift in sound when reality enters a room that wasn't prepared for it. Voices don't rise immediately. They hesitate first, like disbelief needs a second to catch up. Then chairs scrape, glasses clink too hard, a tone creeps in sharp, defensive, unfamiliar, and then my name, Avery, not calm, not composed, called like a lifeline. I stepped out of the executive dining room slowly, not rushed. Not panicked, because for the first time I already knew what I was walking into and I knew I wasn't going to fix it. The main dining area felt louder now, tighter, like the air itself had shifted. Madison was standing, face flushed. Eyes wide, one hand gripping the receipt like it had personally betrayed her. "There's been a mistake," she said the second she saw me. Not hello, not can we talk, a mistake. The manager stood beside her, calm, professional, but firm. "No mistake, ma'am," he said gently. "This is the itemized total for your table." I didn't look at the receipt immediately. I looked at her, because I already knew what it would say. Just put it on Avery's card, Madison said, waving her hand toward me like this was a minor inconvenience. Like I was an extension of the payment system. The manager didn't move. Your sister's party has already closed out separately, he explained. This balance is assigned to your table. That's when her expression changed, not confusion, not embarrassment, panic, real panic. Because for the first time, the assumption didn't match the outcome. You're seriously going to do this? She snapped, turning fully toward me now. In front of everyone? There it was, not how do we fix this, not I didn't realize. But you're going to let me face this? I stepped closer, took the receipt from her hand. $1,247, itemized, clear, precise, 3 bottles of wine, seafood tower, 2 lobster entrees. A tomahawk steak, dessert flights, extras, add-ons, upgrades. I scanned it once, then again, not because I needed to, but because habits don't disappear overnight. For 10 years, this is the moment where I would step in, smile politely, hand over my card, diffuse the situation, erase the consequence. But this time I didn't reach for my wallet. I invited 12 people, I said calmly. The room quieted, not completely, but enough. You brought 10 additional guests, I continued, and ordered independently. Her jaw tightened. It's a birthday dinner, she snapped. You're really going to nickel and dime family over this? Nickel and dime, I almost smiled at that. Because there was nothing small about this number, but more importantly, there was nothing small about the pattern behind it. This isn't about the money, I said quietly, and that confused her. I could see it. Because in her mind, money was always the center of the equation. This is about assumption, I continued. You assumed I would cover it. I didn't assume, she started. You did, I said, still calm. You didn't ask. Silence. That kind of silence that doesn't come from agreement, but from being cornered by truth. Her husband Greg stepped in, lower voice, less aggressive. Look, maybe we can just split it, he said. Split, interesting word. Because splitting only works when everyone agrees before the cost is created, not after. I'm not part of that table, I replied. The manager shifted slightly, sensing the tension tightening. Would you like me to run a card, sir? He asked Greg. Greg nodded, pulled out his wallet. And for a brief second, there was hope in the room, the illusion that this could still be resolved quietly. He handed over the card. The manager walked away, and for a moment, everything held still. Then he came back. I'm sorry, he said gently. The card was declined. That word declined has a very specific weight. It doesn't just reject a transaction. It exposes a reality. Madison's face changed again. Faster this time. Try mine, she said quickly, too quickly. She handed over her card, didn't even look at the total this time, just reacted. The manager took it, walked away. Came back, same expression. I'm sorry, ma'am. Declined. Now the room shifted again. This time there was no illusion left, no performance, no confidence, no control, just exposure. Greg leaned in, whispering something about overdraft protection, about moving money, about timing. Madison wasn't listening. She was staring at me, like this was still somehow my responsibility to fix. You're really going to let this happen? She said, voice cracking now, not loud, not dramatic, real, and for the first time I felt it, that pull, that instinct, that decade-old reflex, just fix it, just end this, just make it go away. But then something cut through it, Ethan's voice from earlier, Mom, where do I sit? And suddenly this wasn't about Madison anymore, it wasn't about embarrassment, it wasn't about family pressure, it wasn't about public perception. It was about what my son had just witnessed, what he was learning, and what I was teaching him without saying a word. So I looked at her, steady, unshaken, and I said it again. The reservation was for 12. Not louder, not harsher. Just final. Something in that sentence closed the door. The manager stepped forward again, more formal this time. Ma'am, if the balance isn't settled, we will need to involve authorities. Authorities. That word escalated everything. You're calling the police over dinner? Madison snapped. Over unpaid charges, the manager corrected calmly. And just like that, the situation crossed a line it couldn't come back from. Within minutes. The flashing red and blue lights reflected through the restaurant windows. People were watching now. Openly, phones out, whispers spreading, not because it was loud, but because it was unusual. Because scenes like this don't happen in places like this. Unless something has gone very wrong. I didn't speak. I didn't defend myself. I didn't step in. I stepped back because this wasn't my equation anymore. The officers arrived. Calm. Routine. They didn't care about family dynamics. They didn't care about birthdays. They didn't care about intentions. They cared about one thing: the bill wasn't paid. To avoid escalation, Madison handed over her driver's license. Her phone. Collateral. Greg left to withdraw cash. Multiple atoms across the city. And in that moment, standing there watching everything unfold, I didn't feel powerful. I didn't feel vindicated. I felt something else, something quiet. Something unfamiliar. Relief. Because for the first time in 10 years, I wasn't carrying it. I wasn't absorbing it. I wasn't fixing it. I turned around, walked back through the kitchen corridor, and stepped into the executive dining room, where my son was laughing, opening gifts, completely unaware of the storm happening just outside the door. And I stayed there, because that room represented something I had never fully protected before. My peace. We left through the back exit. No confrontation, no final words, just quiet. As we drove away, I caught one last glimpse in the rearview mirror: flashing lights, reflections on glass, a scene that no longer belonged to me. That night, after Ethan fell asleep, Daniel asked me something simple. "Are you okay?" I sat at the kitchen table, phone lighting up, messages pouring in, accusations, shock, disbelief, cold, selfish, heartless. Words I had never been called before. And yet, for the first time in a decade, none of them landed the same way. Because underneath all of it, beneath the noise, beneath the judgment, there was a truth I couldn't ignore anymore. You cannot keep adding weight to a system without collapse. You cannot keep paying for someone else's illusion without funding it. And you cannot stretch a 12-seat reservation into something it was never designed to hold without everything eventually breaking. That night wasn't the end of my family, it was the audit, and audits reveal everything. The next morning, I woke up to 43 unread messages, but that wasn't the strange part. The strange part was the silence inside me. No anxiety, no urgency, no mental checklist forming in the background about who I needed to call first, what I needed to fix, how quickly I could contain the damage. For 10 years, the morning after any family gathering came with a routine: damage control. Someone's feelings were hurt, someone misunderstood something, someone needed money quietly before it became visible. And I was always the one who moved first. But that morning, I didn't move. I just lay there, staring at the ceiling, watching winter light filter through the blinds. Daniel was already downstairs, coffee brewing, normal sounds. Stable sounds? Ethan was still asleep, one arm wrapped around the drone he refused to put down the night before. And for the first time in years, nothing felt urgent. I reached for my phone. "Madison, 12 messages. You embarrassed me. You made me look poor. Mom is crying. Dad is furious. How could you do this on Ethan's birthday?" I read them once, then again, and waited for the familiar reaction. The guilt, the pull, the instinct to explain, justify, soften. But it didn't come. Instead, there was something else. Clarity, because for the first time, I wasn't reacting to her words. I was observing them, noticing the pattern. Not one message said I shouldn't have done that. Not one said I didn't realize the situation. Every message said the same thing in different ways: "You didn't fix it." I scrolled further. "My mother, call me, please. My father, we need to talk." Extended family group chat. Already active, dozens of notifications. I locked the phone, set it face down. Daniel walked in with 2 mugs of coffee, set one in front of me, studied my face carefully. "Battlefield?" he asked. I shook my head slightly. "More like Fallout?" He sat across from me, paused, then asked the question I think he already knew the answer to: "Do you regret it?" I didn't answer immediately, because I wanted to be sure, not emotionally, not defensively, honestly. And when I did answer, it surprised even me. "No." I took a breath. "I regret not doing it sooner." That was the first truth, the kind of truth you don't say out loud until you're ready to accept what it means. At 10:30 a.m., my phone rang again. My mother. I answered this time. "Avery," she started, her voice tight, controlled. "Last night was unnecessary." I leaned back in my chair. "Was it?" I asked calmly. There was a pause. "You left your sister stranded," she said. "She ordered $1,200 worth of food without asking," I replied. "She assumed," my mother began. "Yes," I interrupted gently. "She assumed." Silence. That word hung heavier than anything else. "That's what family does," my mother said finally. We assume we have each other's backs. I exhaled slowly. Having someone's back doesn't mean financing their denial. Another silence. Longer this time. You humiliated her, my mother whispered. She humiliated herself, I replied. That landed harder, I could hear it. My father took the phone. You could have covered it, he said, and dealt with it privately. I closed my eyes for a second. And that would have changed what? I asked, no answer. Another birthday, another dinner, another bill, still nothing. Dad, I said more softly now, this isn't about the steakhouse. It's about a pattern. 10 years of small rescues that turned into expectation. He exhaled slowly. You've always been the responsible one, he said. Yes, I replied quietly. And that doesn't mean I'm responsible for everyone. The line went quiet. Your sister feels betrayed, my mother said in the background. I stared at the table. I felt used. That word felt heavier than I expected. Used, because that's what it was. Not malicious, not intentional, but real. Madison never saw my stability as something I built. She saw it as something available. Like a shared account she could tap into whenever she needed it without asking. After we hung up, I opened my laptop. Because numbers don't argue, they don't manipulate, they don't twist narratives, they just tell the truth. I logged into Ethan's college savings account. And without overthinking it, I transferred $1,247, the exact amount of the bill, not out of spite, not as a statement, but as a correction. Because that money was never supposed to disappear into wine and lobster, it was supposed to build something. I stared at the confirmation screen longer than necessary, because that moment felt different, not like revenge, like realignment. By noon, the story had already started spreading. A cousin sent me a screenshot. Madison had posted on Facebook. Family isn't about money, it's about loyalty. Imagine inviting your sister to your nephew's birthday and then abandoning her with the bill to prove a point. Some people let success turn their hearts cold. No names. But everyone knew. I didn't respond, didn't comment, didn't defend myself. Because I understood something most people don't. Silence is uncomfortable for people who rely on noise. Within an hour, comments started appearing. That's awful. Family shouldn't do that. Money isn't everything. Then one comment appeared from Ethan's friend's mother, 4 words. There were separate tables. That was it, no explanation, no argument, just truth. And truth doesn't need volume. Madison deleted it within minutes, then tagged me directly. Care to explain? I stared at the notification. Daniel leaned over my shoulder. You going to respond? He asked. I shook my head. No, because engaging would turn it into a performance, and I was done performing. Around 3 p.m., I got a message I wasn't expecting. Greg, he rarely contacted me directly. Usually everything went through Madison. Hey, things escalated fast last night. I read it twice. I didn't realize how high the total would be. I stared at that line, didn't realize he ordered the tomahawk steak, the seafood tower, the extra rounds. You don't accidentally spend $1,200, you choose it, I typed back slowly. You ordered without asking. 3 dots appeared, then disappeared. Finally, we're in a tight spot financially. There it was, the crack. The truth behind the performance. How tight? I asked. Long pause, then cards are maxed. Overdraft fees hit this morning. Mortgage due next week. I leaned back in my chair. For years, Madison's life looked polished, curated. Effortless, designer bags, weekend brunch photos, carefree captions. But now the curtain was lifting. And behind it was something fragile, something unsustainable. I didn't respond immediately. Instead, I asked one question. Why did you assume I would pay? No reply, no dots, because there wasn't a good answer. There never is. Around 5 p.m., my phone rang again. Madison, I almost didn't pick up, but I did. You're enjoying this, aren't you? She said immediately. I blinked. Enjoying what? Watching me scramble, she snapped. Watching everyone talk about it. I looked around my kitchen. I'm not watching, I said calmly. I'm at home. Silence. You knew we didn't have that kind of money, she said. Then you shouldn't have ordered it. You've always covered before. There it was, not accusation, expectation. Yes, I said. And that was my mistake. She went quiet. You made me look poor, she said finally. I closed my eyes briefly. You made yourself look reckless. Her breathing shifted. Then she started crying, not dramatic, not loud, real. I didn't want Kelsey to think we couldn't afford it, she whispered. And just like that, the truth slipped out. Not about hunger, not about celebration, about image. You ordered wine to impress your friend? I asked softly. I didn't want to look small. That sentence explained everything. I sat down slowly. Madison, I said carefully, looking wealthy and being stable are not the same thing. You think you're better than me, she snapped. No, I said. I think I plan better than you. Silence. Not anger, recognition, because for the first time I wasn't attacking her, I was describing reality. You could have just helped me quietly, she said again. And then what? I asked. Christmas, next birthday? Another surprise? She didn't answer because she knew. After we hung up, I stood by the window, looking out at the city. Daniel walked up beside me. You okay? He asked. She didn't want to look small, I said. He nodded slowly. That's expensive. And that was the thing, not just financially, but emotionally, psychologically. Because when someone builds their identity on appearance, reality feels like an attack. The next morning, the consequences started stacking. The SUV payment bounced. 3 days later, it was repossessed. And just like that, the illusion wasn't just cracked anymore, it was collapsing. And for the first time, no one was stepping in to hold it together. By the end of that week, the story had split into two versions. In Madison's version, I had staged a public betrayal. I had invited her, encouraged her, let her order, and then blindsided her to prove a point about money. In my version, I had done something much simpler. I had stopped participating. And the uncomfortable truth. For most of our lives, the family preferred her version, because her version didn't require anyone to change. Sunday came, the standing dinner at my parents' house. Same time, same routine, same expectations. For years, those Sundays had been predictable. Pot roast in the oven, muted football in the living room, Madison telling stories about minor inconveniences that somehow required major sympathy. And if things went sideways, they didn't stay sideways for long, because I was always there. To stabilize, to absorb, to smooth it over before it turned into something real. Daniel looked at me before we left. You want to go? He asked. Yes, I said, not defensive, not forced. I'm not avoiding my own family. When we pulled into the driveway, something felt different immediately. Madison's SUV was gone. The driveway looked incomplete without it. Instead, Greg's older sedan sat near the curb, slightly crooked, unpolished, honest. Inside, the tension was immediate, not loud, not explosive, but dense, like the room itself was holding its breath. Madison was already seated at the table. No dramatic entrance, no designer handbag, no performance. Her eyes were puffy, her posture rigid, defensive. My mother stayed busy in the kitchen, overly focused on chopping vegetables that didn't need that much attention. My father sat at the head of the table, silent, tired. Hi, I said simply. Madison didn't respond at first, then gave a short nod. That was new. Ethan slipped past us, ran straight to his grandfather. Unaware, unburdened, we sat down. And for the first 10 minutes, everyone pretended. Whether school, work, safe topics, but silence has a limit. And Madison reached it first. She set her fork down. You really couldn't have handled that differently? She asked. Not looking at me, looking at her plate. I didn't raise my voice. I handled it clearly. That made her look up. You made it public. You made it public when you stood up and screamed, I replied. Her jaw tightened. I panicked. Because the bill existed, I asked. Silence. You embarrassed me. I leaned forward slightly. You were embarrassed because the reality didn't match the image. That landed hard. You think I fake my life, she snapped. I think you perform it, I said evenly. The room went completely quiet. My mother finally spoke. She just wanted to be part of Ethan's birthday. She was welcome to ask, I replied. She's your sister. And I'm hers, I said. Which means she could have picked up the phone instead of showing up with 10 extra people. Greg cleared his throat. I thought you knew, he said quietly. Knew what? I asked. That we were coming. I looked at him. I didn't, he shifted uncomfortably. She told me it was all set. There it was again. Assumption layered on assumption. Why would I book 12 seats and expect 22? I asked calmly. No one answered because there wasn't an answer. Madison pushed her chair back slightly. You've always acted like you're better, she said, because you manage money, like that makes you morally superior. I shook my head slowly. I don't think I'm superior. I think I'm disciplined, she laughed bitterly. You make spreadsheets for fun. Yes, I said, no defense, no apology. My father rubbed his temples. Enough, he muttered, but it wasn't enough, not yet. For 10 years, I continued, I've covered small things quietly. I never asked for recognition. I never brought it up. But every time I paid, the expectation grew. I never asked you to, Madison snapped. No, I agreed. You just expected me to. That hit. You could feel it move through the room. Greg looked down. My mother exhaled shakily. She's under pressure, my mother said. The mortgage, the kids, and I'm not, I asked gently. I have a mortgage. I have a child. I just don't hide it behind wine labels. Madison stood up abruptly. You think I'm irresponsible? I think you're overwhelmed and pretending you're not. Her eyes flashed. Don't psychoanalyze me. I'm not, I said. I'm stating facts. Silence again, but this time it felt different. Heavier, because the performance was gone. My father finally spoke. How bad is it? He asked Greg. Greg hesitated. Looked at Madison, then answered. About 60,000. The room froze. 60,000? My father repeated. Madison crossed her arms. It's temporary. It's not temporary, I said quietly. If you're only making minimum payments. She glared at me. You don't get to lecture. I'm not lecturing. I'm explaining why I didn't pay. My mother sank into her chair. We didn't know, she whispered. That's the problem, I said softly. No one asks. For years, Madison's life had been buffered, smoothed, softened by people who loved her but never challenged her, and by me who made sure the consequences never fully landed. Greg ran a hand through his hair. The SUV got repossessed, he said quietly. That one hit differently. When? My father asked. Tuesday. Madison looked like she might cry, but anger hardened her expression instead. You're all enjoying this, she said. No, I replied immediately. I'm relieved. She stared at me. Relieved? Yes, because now it's honest. That word hung in the air, honest. No more curated photos, no more staged brunches. No more pretending overdraft notices didn't exist, just reality, and reality is stable. My father leaned back slowly. We tried to help, he said. You didn't help, Madison shot back. You spoiled. He flinched. That's not fair, my mother whispered. It is, I said gently. Rescuing isn't the same as helping. Madison sank back into her chair. You think this is some lesson? She asked. No, I said. It's a reset. She looked up sharply. For all of us, silence. Greg looked at me. What would you have done? He asked. I thought about it carefully. I would have asked, I said. For money, Madison snapped. For clarity, I corrected. Before ordering, before showing up, she shook her head. You don't understand the pressure. Try me, I said quietly. She hesitated, and then something shifted. Her shoulders dropped. I didn't want to look like I was falling behind, she admitted. Behind who? I asked. She looked at me. You. That landed heavier than the $60,000. I never competed with you, I said. You didn't have to, she replied. Silence, but this time it wasn't hostile, it was revealing. For the first time, I saw something different in her, not entitlement, fear. My kids think we're rich, she said quietly. I didn't want them to know. Greg squeezed her hand. They know now, he said gently. That moment changed the room, not completely, not magically, but enough. My father stood slowly. We're not paying this off, he said firmly. Madison looked up, shocked. You're not? No, he said. We can't. The safety net was gone. Her eyes moved to me. You happy? She asked. No, I said honestly, but I'm not fixing it. She looked away. Dinner continued, awkward, quiet, but no one raised their voice again. Because once truth is spoken out loud, you can't pretend it isn't there. When we left, Madison didn't hug me, but she didn't accuse me either. That was new. In the car, Daniel glanced at me. You good? He asked. I think so, I said. How does it feel? I looked out the window. Like gravity. He frowned slightly. What do you mean? I exhaled slowly. When you stop holding something up, it doesn't explode. It just falls to where it was always headed. And sometimes that's the only way to rebuild. 2 weeks passed, and for the first time in 10 years, no one asked me for anything. No quick favors. No small covers. No last-minute emergencies that somehow had a price tag attached. Just silence. At first, it felt strange. Unfamiliar, like walking into a room where something should be happening but isn't. Because when you've spent years being the solution, you get used to being needed. And when that stops, you have to ask yourself something uncomfortable. Who am I if I'm not fixing everyone else's problems? That question sat with me longer than I expected. Not because I didn't know the answer, but because I had never been forced to define it clearly. For years, my identity had been built quietly around reliability. The one who shows up. The one who handles things. The one who absorbs pressure so others don't feel it. But reliability without boundaries doesn't create respect, it creates dependency. And dependency eventually becomes entitlement. That was the system. And for the first time, I had stepped out of it, not loudly, not dramatically, just permanently. 3 weeks after the dinner, I got a message from Greg, short, simple. We sold the dining table. I stared at it for a second. Then another message, paid off 2 credit cards. I didn't reply immediately because this wasn't a conversation, it was an update, a quiet one, the kind that doesn't ask for approval or validation or rescue, just acknowledgement. I typed back, good, nothing more because progress doesn't need applause, it needs consistency. A few days later, Madison called, not late at night, not in a panic. Mid-afternoon, that was new, I answered. Hey, she said. Her voice was different, not fragile, not defensive, just lower. Hey, I replied, a pause. I got a job, she said. I leaned back slightly. Doing what? Event coordination, she said. I almost smiled, of course. She had always been good at creating moments. The difference now was that she'd have to manage the cost of them too. That fits you, I said. Another pause. I didn't call for approval, she said quickly. I know, I replied. I called because, she hesitated, because this part mattered. I wanted you to hear it from me. That was the first real shift, not the job, not the money, the ownership. I'm glad you told me, I said, silence. Then I'm not asking you for anything, she added. I know, I said again, and I meant it, because something had changed. Not just in her, in the system itself. That invisible structure we had all been operating inside, it had been reset. Not destroyed, reset. And resets are uncomfortable because they remove shortcuts. They remove assumptions. They remove the quiet safety nets no one talks about but everyone relies on. A month later, Ethan asked me a question. Out of nowhere, while we were driving home from school. Mom, yeah. He looked out the window. Why didn't you pay for Aunt Madison's dinner? I kept my eyes on the road, because this moment mattered more than the dinner ever did. Do you remember what you asked me that night? I said. He thought for a second, then nodded. Where do I sit? Yeah, I said softly. That question told me something. What? He asked. That something wasn't fair. He frowned slightly. But it was just dinner. I shook my head. No, I said, it wasn't. It was about responsibility. He stayed quiet, listening. When someone makes a choice, I continued, they're responsible for what comes with it. Even if it's hard, even if it's embarrassing. He nodded slowly. So you didn't help because it wasn't your choice? I smiled slightly. Exactly. He thought about that for a moment, then said something I didn't expect. That makes sense. Simple, clear, no guilt, no confusion, just understanding. And in that moment, I knew I had done the right thing, not because it felt good, but because it was true. 2 months later, we went back to the same steakhouse. Same location, same lighting, same quiet elegance, but everything felt different. Because this time there was no tension attached to it, no history pressing against the walls, just a clean experience. 12 seats. Exactly 12. Madison was there, invited, she arrived on time. Alone, no extra guests, no assumptions. She sat down, looked around, and then looked at me. Reservation for 12? She asked lightly. I nodded, she smiled. Good, that was it, no apology speech, no dramatic reconciliation, just awareness. And awareness changes behavior faster than guilt ever could. Dinner was normal, conversations flowed, Ethan laughed. No one overordered, no one performed. And when the bill came, Madison didn't look at me, she reached for it, paused. Then said, let's split it properly? Not assumed, asked. I met her eyes, and for the first time in years there was something different there, not expectation, not dependency, respect, real respect. We split the bill, cleanly, clearly. No tension, no hidden weight, and as we walked out she fell into step beside me. Hey, she said quietly. I looked at her. I didn't realize how much you were carrying, she admitted. I nodded slightly. Neither did I, she exhaled. I'm figuring things out. I know, I said. A pause. Thank you, she added. I stopped walking. Not for the dinner, she clarified quickly. For not fixing it, that was the moment, not the argument, not the bill, not the fallout. This. Because real change doesn't happen when someone rescues you, it happens when they don't. We walked to our cars, separate, independent, balanced. And as I drove home that night, there was no noise in my head, no mental calculations. No emotional residue, just quiet. The kind of quiet that comes from alignment, from boundaries, from understanding that being a good person doesn't mean being an unlimited resource. And that sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is nothing. Because silence, when it replaces enabling, isn't weakness, it's control. And control, quietly, consistently, changes everything.